Yes, good evening, members. A very warm welcome from Team Training and Education for today's webinar series of Gyan Ganga webinar series 56. Today, our topic is CPM policy and claims FAQs, and our faculty is Mr. Sainani sir.
Hello, am I audible? Hello, hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your voice is clear.
Okay. Shankar, पंखा धीरे करो एक गिलास पानी भी भर दो, टिश्यू भी रख दो और कॉफी.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
yes, I can hear you.
Yes, good evening and very warm welcome from Team Training and Education. Due to technical problem and network issue, we are starting late. I apologize for that. We welcome Mr. Sainani sir, and I request Sainani sir to start with today's session.
Good evening, friends. CPM, we started with policy and claims, and then we switched on to few case studies. There were many questions. I have tried consolidating all the questions in one session. There may be a few questions which might have been dropped inadvertently. Apologies for that. You can write separately for attending to those questions. I'm starting the session. The first question which has come is from Mr. Sandeep Agrawal, which says, I'm audible. Hello, I'm audible.
Yes, sir. You're
Hello?
audible. Yes.
Yes. Okay. The first question is from Mr. Sandeep Agrawal. I have tried consolidating group of questions, so I have chosen first name which had raised this question. So Sandeep Agrawal had raised the question: policies exclude underground work. Insured is illiterate from a village and have not opted for endorsement. Can the loss be payable in any way? Sorry, no, it cannot be, because we are guided by the policy. The policy says underground works exclusion hai, the premium is not paid. We have to quantify the loss. We have to tell insured that this particular exclusion is applicable. And in any way, I think we are not the one who are going to take a call on this, or we are going to decide on that. It is very clear that insurers will not accept liability when an equipment is working underground and premium for underground working is not paid. The exceptions are tunnel boring machine and tunnel drilling machines, in which the premium is already built in. For boom separate axis, a very highly confused area. For boom separate axis, will there be two axes, boom axis and normal axis? Boom axis is applicable in case of cranes more than 10 tons only. Okay. Now, there are policies where I have seen that boom axis on any section is applied. Say boom of an excavator, boom of a crane, boom of anything. Now boom is a generic name, and the tariff is very clear that boom more than 10 tons, even for a boom less than 10 tons, separate axis is not applicable. Okay. So when a boom is damaged, a boom only is damaged, only boom axis would be applicable, or respectively two separate axes would be applicable if both the machine and boom both are damaged. Otherwise, boom axis will be applied separately. Okay. If only boom damage, one axis will be applicable to the boom only if the boom is damaged. But if the machine and boom both are damaged, both the axis will apply simultaneously. But the boom axis will be applicable only on the boom section amount. Second question is by Mr. Madhu. If the machine is running after standard useful life, what is the approach in calculation if loss occurred within the policy period? A very good question. This we can consider as an extended life case. let us take example of very heavy cranes operating at ports. Okay, say for a heavy crane of PH or Liver or any other crane, the normal operating period for such cranes with good maintenance is 25 to 30 years. Now you will find that there are cranes which have run 40 years, which have run more than 40 years also. Now in such cranes, what is done? The life is extended by repowering power packs, like engine is a power pack, hydraulic pump is a power pack, or there may be change of gears, or there may be change of wear parts. So you can extend life. Now the question, a very dicey thing is, how to arrive at value of such machines in case of checking of adequacy and in case of a total loss. Now I am not going to deal adequacy here. Adequacy is dealt with separately in forthcoming slides. I'll talk about the value of extended machines in the event of total loss. Okay, this is basically a dicey questions. There are certain surveyors who are working as values also. They will appreciate my answer to this question, that value of machine for an extended life machine. Okay, how to arrive? Okay, there are many parameters. This is a very lengthy exercise. I propose to take another session on valuation of second-hand machines. I'll not cover the detail, but we can come to a midway solution. Okay, though there is no written, deliberations as to that, but generally what is done, maximum depreciation applied is 75%. Okay, it is considered that if an old machine is revived, every time it is revived, the expenditure would be incurred and it will maintain a level of 25% value of the machine. So this is just a thumb rule. Don't consider that this is a final verdict. Okay, if a machine is having, say, turbines are having, I'm not talking a CPM machine, I'm talking of turbines. Turbines are considered as Amar machines. Okay, they run for over 100 years. I have seen turbines of 1908, 1928, and like that still working. Water turbines and other kind of turbines are still working. These are repowered, reconditioned, remodeled to suit the current environment, and there can be a residual value which will be more than scrap. It will be something in between the scrap value and the operational value. Okay, so I'm dropping second part of this answer for some next session, because as a valuer and as a surveyor, I'll be able to do justice to my job if a full session is taken on valuation of second-hand machineries. Fixing sum insured is one part, and valuation of second-hand machineries is second part, which can be taken. Please do let me know your feeling, because you may have a different viewpoint. You can write to me. You can send questions to Isla. I'll try attending to those questions. Third question is by Nikhil. How to find the parts recommended by manufacturer with limited life? Okay. I think there is no ready-made solution, but there can be guidelines, and the guidelines are, we can go to operator's manual. We can ask for an operator's manual. Nowadays on web, these are available. If it is not available, ask insured for getting one copy from their records or from the manufacturer, or even certification on manufacturer will suffice. There are manufacturers who have their records, and they can derive from archives. Okay, my machine normally runs for 25,000 hours, but we have a record of machines running more than 50,000 hours also. Recently, I saw in one of the CPM case that manufacturer had said, yes, we have got a machine more than 30,000 hours. Okay, and it is very common that our machines are running between 20,000 to 25,000 hours. There are various controlling parameters of achieving best life for an equipment. I'll give you an example. The Sulzer looms, who are the pioneers in weaving industry, one of the 1926 loom is still operating. It is operating, not that it is operating for its quality. It is having a sentimental value, or it is having a exhibitional value. The weavers, it's a big weaving unit. They say, okay, we have got Rieter, we have got Liva, we have got many kinds of looms, or rapier looms and airjet looms. But this is our show window where we can show you we are still running a 1926 Sulzer loom. Okay. Now, from the maintenance record, we can find out what are the parts which require frequent replacement. And the frequency, you will find that after every 3 years or after running of, say, 6,000 hours or 5,000 hours, this part requires replacement. This is in absence of operator's manual. Okay. The question is very interesting, very important. And I must tell, Mr. Nikhil has thoughtfully raised this question. Now, if maintenance records are not available, okay, let us assume that operator's manual is not available, maintenance records are not available, or history of maintenance is not available because the factory was taken over by some other management and the old management did not pass on those manuals or maintenance records. Okay, we can have a discussion with the maintenance team. Okay, भैया बताओ तुम कब कब क्या क्या change करते हो? So they'll tell you these are the items which require. They must be having the inventory in the source also. Every 3 years we require replacement. Like say take example of capacitors. You will find that even very good capacitors will have a life of 3 to 4 years, not more than that. Okay. So by virtue of our qualification, experience, expertise, I may be say from a chemical engineering stream, but that much of basic skill is acquired over a period of time to decide what are the parts which require periodical replacement. Okay. Then your perception, rational. It should be rational. It should not be rational that you go on applying depreciation on every part which you feel is replaceable periodically. There are two conditions. It should be subject to wear and tear, and there should be a recommendation of manufacturers to replace those items. Now, very old machines are normally not insured as a good underwriting practice. These equipments are very old equipments are not insured under CPA. Okay, so this is my viewpoint. This is how we address to the problems when an old equipment comes up before us. Second question by Nikhil is, during fire in excavators, it is required to check the quality of fuel used at the time of loss. Does the mixing of diesel oil with kerosene or other fuel can lead to repudiation of claim? Though the equipment was on lease to subcontractor, in addition to this, what survey methodology followed for such fire losses? Now, very interesting case, very dicey situation. First thing, my viewpoint is mixing kerosene in diesel had become very common.
I think.
Am I audible? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Sachin,
Yes, sir.
Suresh?
You are audible. Yes, yes.
Okay. So mixing of various fuels deliberately or knowingly, if it has come from the fuel supply agency or a petrol pump, let us keep that situation aside. We are talking of deliberate mixing of fuel in diesel. Okay, there can be biodiesel, it can be kerosene or something like that. To my mind, all these fuels like biodiesel, kerosene, and diesel are having more or less same flash point. There is no aggravation of risk because of mixing of fuels. But since the question is raised, we must address, we must intimate to the insurers and insured as well that yes, this is the situation when the fuel mixing is found. Now, how to find out that? Okay, if there's a fire, if you have a suspect that fuel is mixed with something, take a sample. Okay, make 4 samples out of it. Seal the samples. Ask insured to keep 1 sample. Keep 1 sample for umpire. Send 1 sample for testing, and 1 sample can be submitted to insurance company. I think this is what we had been doing in some of the cases. Okay, if you have suspect that diesel is mixed with say solvent. Okay, now solvent is something akin to petrol. Okay, the flash points are similar to petrol. Okay, and the solvent available in market is relatively cheaper with diesel at 80 rupees and thereabout. Okay, so such kind of situations are to be reported to the insurers. We have to sensitize to the insured that you have done something which might have aggravated or which might have resulted in this fire loss, and hence we are going to report it to insurers. Let insurers take a call whether this breach of manufacturer's recommendation, it's a precondition in policy that it will be operated as per manufacturer's recommendation. Now the final call will be of insurers. It will not be of a surveyor that no, this claim becomes a no claim or a non-standard or something. So methodology we have discussed. There can be forensic analysis, there can be sample taking, there can be analytical analysis, there can be systematic empirically we can arrive at that. So the crux is deviation from standard operation might call for taking cognizance by surveyors and insurers, and there should be objective and subjective approach. It should not be variable. I mean, we should be very clear about our approach. By the way, adding kerosene, I have already discussed, to diesel doesn't aggravate the risk, as the flash point of both is almost same. One thing I missed to tell, how to what survey methodology is to be followed in such fires. The best thing is to inspect the equipment very carefully. Okay, try closing in on seat of fire. Okay, once you are able to identify the seat of fire, okay, there may be an external cause, there may be winter season, and wood was lit underneath the excavator to prevent the watchman or the helper of the machine from chilly winds. Okay, that fire got aggravated and hose pipe caught fire, and there was splash of hydraulic oil which aggravated the fire, and the equipment was burnt in fire. I mean, we have to apply common sense in arriving at how the fire could have started. There can be 5, 6, 7, 2, 3, 4 situations. All those situations are to be studied, and one by elimination theory, these are to be eliminated, and we can pose in on some 2, 3 final aspects. Those aspects again are to be discussed, carefully inspected, photographs taken, and then we can come to a conclusion. This is my call, this is my conclusion, or this is my recommendation. Speak to insurers, speak to insured, and you can ask insurers for a forensic analysis if the claim quantum justifies that. If it's quite big, if it is crores of rupees, a forensic expert can be deployed to identify the cause of loss, and accordingly, on the outcome of that is to be compared with your observation. You have very well, I mean, authority to challenge that finding also if it is not fair. So I think this is how fire losses in equipments can be addressed. A question by Mr. Suresh. In a jig boring machine and rock drilling machines, the tool like drills and bore tools are broken and stuck underground, though the machine is placed above ground. Are such tool payable? Mr. Suresh, I would recommend strongly to go through the policy end to end many number of times, close in on areas where you really do not understand what they want to say. I wish to reproduce. No, it is excluded. Exception C. Now I'll read out exception C. Loss of or damage to replaceable parts and attachments such as bits, drills, knives, or other cutting edges. So your question is answered here. Saw blades, dies, molds, patterns, polarizing and crushing surfaces, screens and sieves, ropes, belts, chains, elevator and conveyor belts, batteries, tires, connecting wires and cables, flexible pipes, joining and packing material regularly replaced. So this answers a lot many questions which come to our mind. Why this is so, let us not go into details. This is there. Even if it is an accidental loss to these items, these are not covered. Mr. Pankaj, do you mean that GST is not payable? Probably this is referring to my session where I took GST and discussed about it. I do not want to say that GST is not payable. It depends on merits of the case, and purely on the merits of the case, this matter can be handled. I would like to elaborate a little more on this. There is a rule, GST rule number 44C. For more than 5 years, no reversal of GST is required, and no claim in any case is to be given, even if it is included in sum insured. Okay, so because insured is not required to reverse, insured is not required to give back the credit already taken to the GST department. Now, the general guidelines: a heavy machine will have a life of 5 years. It is assumed under rule number 44C. Okay, so for every completed 1 month, the GST component available on total GST amount will be 1/60th component, which is 1.6% per month. Say suppose if a machine has run for 10 days, 10 months, 29 days, so the insured would qualify for non-reversal of amount would be 10/60, not 29 days. But if 10 month 30th day is completed, it would be 11 month. Accordingly, say for a 10 lakh GST, you have to divide 10 months multiplied by custom duty divided by GST divided by 60, you'll get the amount. This is the amount which need not be recommended, and rest of the amount, if it is properly and adequately included in sum insured. Okay, if it is not already underinsured, on the basis of sum insured, it is included as dues, and accordingly, the balance amount can be paid or is recommended for reversal, subject to evidence of reversal of the duty. Next is, one machine overturns and sinks in deep water during working in Yamuna riverbed and sustain heavy damages. What is our liability? Now, these heavy damages is something, a very broad question. We need to qualify that. What are the damages payable and what are the damages which could not be considered in light of policy terms and conditions? Immediate losses due to sinking, bogging down are covered. There are many questions of this nature. I think Mr. Yudhvir has asked a detailed question which we will be handling in last part of the session. So immediate losses due to sinking. Suppose if a machine is working on soft ground, or even if it is working on solid ground, but due to ingress of water or due to raising of water table, the land becomes marshy or soft, and because of the dead weight, the machine starts sinking in. Now, what happens as a natural reaction? The operator will start racing the machine. Okay, and the more they race, the more machine will go down in the mud or in the soft soil. That is called bogging down. Indian policies are not having any exclusion on bogging down. Okay, but most of the advanced countries, they have exclusion in similar policies, machine policies, equipment policies, that bogging down is not covered. That means you have to take adequate, ample care. You have to study the strata of soil wherever you are working. If soil is supposed to be soft, then you have to provide adequate logs. You have to provide adequate strength to the surface so that the machine can work without bogging down. Situation in our country is different. Okay, bogging down is not excluded. But once because of settling or thinking of the machine or bogging down, the policy is very clear on that aspect, that you should stop machine and start pulling the machine outside using external sources, and that retrieval cost is very well payable in the policy. What happens is exactly opposite. Operator and the owners and the site people, they start exerting load on machine, and that results to many of the internal losses to the engine, to the hydraulic pumps, to the various sensitive hydraulic parts. And beyond, I mean, if it is bogged down, the losses up to that, I mean, washing, cleaning, there may be electronic items, there may be electrical items which are not excluded, can be covered, but rest of the items would not fall within ambit of the policy, which I have mentioned as subsequent losses due to continued running are not serviceable under the policy or not payable under the policy. Next question 6, Mr. Rajesh. Is the hydraulic oil leaked due to accidental loss or fire incident? Fire accident incident covered, and if covered, what is the rate of application of depreciation? Again, an area of concern. I am going to give you my personal view. There were a lot of discussions since 2006. I have been facing this question. We have been discussing a lot. I wrote to the then TAC several times. It is written to many agencies, but none of the agencies are coming forward with their viewpoint or final or clear verdict. So to my mind, hydraulic oil is a replaceable part, and hence this is not covered. I am sure many amongst would not agree. Okay, I don't say that you agree to that, but this is what the prevailing, not only practice, but there are reasons. I'm not going to narrate all those reasons because I'm not the final authority. I'm giving you my view. Okay, there are debates on this. These are never-ending debates. None of the authorities have clarified so far. I have already proposed a white paper by institute is highly recommended on such situations to follow universally. Before making this presentation, I tried scanning through Supreme Court and NCDRC citations, but enforceable decisions or case laws are not available on this, and hence I will refrain myself from commenting conclusively on this. Mr. Karan, do you have to take CS certificate for GST input credit? In case of GST input credit, CA certificate and reversal is required. Okay. Now, there's a general, I mean, feeling amongst our brother surveyors, particularly engineer surveyors, or even for that matter, in minds of insurers. Once we obtain a license and devote some good 5, 10, 15 years, I think these lines are fading away. Okay, a CA certificate may not be enough to prove that GST is reversed. So what is required? You ask for a GSTR 3B, study the copy. If GSTR 3B equivalent amount of GST liability works out, which can be worked out by the CA. A CA can work out what is the reversal liability, and that amount is to be exhibited in GST 3B as reversed, and hence the claim to the GST component can be considered. Now, there are two bases of settlement for total loss and partial loss. There can be adequacy to be checked in the same way. Now, one thing I want to say, there is no need of reversal of GST in case of repair basis settlement, which is 2A. Repair basis settlement, insured can get full GST inputs. However, in case of total loss, Rule 44C comes into play, and then only this GST 3R's reversal issue comes into play. And to ease out the situation, it is said CSA certificate leke aa jao. Now, CA certificate he can give only on the basis of reversal of GST, or he can certify this is required to be reversed. But whether it is reversed or not is not sure. To ensure that it is reversed, which again is a matter of debate whether it is surveyor's job to see whether reversal is done or not. I'm not going to discuss on that, and no personal comments on that. But yes, if you see the GSTR 3B, the equivalent amount calculated by arriving 1/60 into number of months life completed, the GSTR is reversed. In that case, there's a liability, probably if that sum insured is adequate, including GST. I will say like some insured is floating. I mean, the machine was purchased at 10 lakhs and after 6 months it is costing 12 lakhs. The sum insured is moving up. Okay. Similarly, the GST is going down. If you start for every 1 month, 1.6% GST is being consumed. Okay. Say after 2.5 years of life, only half of the GST would be required to be reversed. For adequacy of sum insured, every year it needs to be revised. Okay, the formula has to be 1/60, that is 1.6%, 67% of the consumed life. GST can be reduced in the sum insured. Beyond 5 years age of the equipment, neither GST is required to be insured nor it is paid. I am very clear on that. If anybody is having a doubt or say different opinion, yes, we are open to discussions. We are open to understanding and making corrections in that. Mr. Karan, another question. Against RIV at risk, some claimants are telling they are getting GST input credit. In that case, they are telling you should not consider tax part in VAR, but policies mentioning landed cost inclusive of all taxes and duties. In that case, what is the step? You are absolutely right. Basis of sum insured has to be adhered to. That means it is saying custom duties and dues. When the policy was drafted, GST was not in vogue or not in practice in India. Now, due is a government due, it's a GST, it needs to be included in sum insured. However, an intelligent insured will go on reducing the GST component in sum insured because there may not be a liability at all on GST. And if liability is not there, I'm not going to recommend as a surveyor, and there's no point in paying extra premium. As an alternate, skipping both places will lead to almost same net effect, but not recommended because there will be a breach of, I mean, there will be a mistake from surveyor's part if we are skipping GST in value at risk and GST in adequacy of sum insured, though the net effect would be same. But I feel that it should be, a calculation should be given and it can be compared in both ways, what net effect it is going to have, and we can work out on that. Next question is by Mr. Ajay. There are about 22 questions. So we, what's the time? 7:40. It is already 7:40. Okay. In CPM policy, area of operation is mentioned and the loss reported during transit in some geographic, same geographic area. Whether this loss falls under CPM policy, X is mentioned for transit. Now, same geographic area is again a breakdown. Say I'm giving ABC Cement Company Okay, now ABC Cement Company is a greenfield project. There might be a mining area abutting with the cement plant. Now that area, which is well defined within the legal terms of that premises, even say transit within that premises, even on a trailer bed, is covered. But when it comes to if you are going outside the premises on a trailer bed and there's a fall of the equipment, this is not covered. And your I mean tail end of the question says access is mentioned in the transit. If access is mentioned, better to speak to insurers how they have mentioned, whether they have any intention to cover transit loss. If yes, ask them for an endorsement, post claim endorsement, or if it is already exhibited like special contingency policy or policies packaged bundled into one CPM in transit, that can be covered. Mr. Nishit. Sir, in case quotation is not made available by insured, how can we reach on average? Yes. Very interesting question. I appreciate this area is one of the most difficult area when estimate is not provided by the insured. Okay. So in that case, we have to proceed with capitalized cost. When you purchase the machine 2011, what was the cost? Say 50 lakhs. Now you compare 2011 and 2020 machine, you don't have replacement values. You go on escalating 2011 values to 2020 values or 19 values whenever the losses occur. Compare it and offer it to insured that since you are not giving me anything, this is what I am going to take and we can proceed accordingly. And if at all there is a betterment over a period of time, that can be adjusted. Then second is marketing inquiries, though it is not always possible. For a special machine, say a giant shank ripper costing 3.5 crore 8 years back, now nobody is going to give you a quote. Labor is not going to give you a quote for that machine, okay? Because they will simply throw your email or your query to dust it. They will not respond. Mr. Narendra, damages while loading in vehicle for shifting to another site could be part of CPM policy. To me, loading and unloading doesn't form part of the CPM policy. A peril better insured under marine policy. If marine policy is not there, we are helpless and but to say sorry and express our regrets. Mr. David, again a similar question. Mr. David has devised that question very carefully and very intelligently. What is the kilometer limit for cross-country jobs like EHV lines, gas pipelines, railways? We have been doing such losses. Okay, insurers carelessly and very casually provide these covers. There are no specified limits as long as the policy is safe. There are no. But we as a surveyor, we have to see, say a gas pipeline running from Shahjahanpur to Hamirpur, an extension of say 18-inch dia pipeline is being extended from Shahjahanpur to Hamirpur, which is 70 kilometers long. The path is well defined. The area around pipeline 2 is clearly defined. They have a right of way. They have a right of control of that particular area. Say 18-inch dia, you'll find that 10 meters on both sides. Nobody can install anything, cannot plant a tree, cannot put an electric pole. So there's an exclusive right of way. Within that exclusive right of way, ideal thing is at the time of underwriting, the insured should say, sir, I have got 20 years span which is within my right of way. But there's an extended area of say 500 meters on either side because my machine should be moving within that area. So at the time of underwriting and at the time of loss, we need to see genuinely if the machine is operating nearby. If a machine is operating 100 kilometers away from that location or 20 kilometers away from that location, not connected with the project at all, we can raise an objection and we can report it to the insurer. Let them take a final call on that. As I have already said, this is a matter of good underwriting practice. It is better to clarify at the time of underwriting so as to well define. These problems come because of lack of understanding of the risk or perception of the risk by the underwriters, non-deployment of the risk engineers or risk surveyors, or even loss assessors who are doubling as risk surveyors. So in that case, good underwriting practices, insured should tell under aberrima fight or utmost good faith that these are the situations. Intelligent insurer underwriter would ask many questions, and those questions can be satisfied either by inspection by their own team or by an independent surveyor, which would help resolving such problems at a late stage. Mr. Dhondo, if IDV, I doubt, sir, CPM, there's no terminology like IDV, it is sum insured. is not adequately insured due to imported machines, what is the effect on assessment whether intermediary bill is second-hand purchasing machine? Okay. Now, basis of sum insured as narrated in the policy is very clear. Even for second-hand machines, it should have a new replacement value of the machine of equivalent specification. So there's no escape if a crane, let us talk of Potain crane of say 20-ton capacity tower crane costing about 5 crores these days. An old crane was purchased for a crore of rupees, imported reconditioned. Now we say, okay, 1 crore machine we are giving. That is not right. Better to compare, have it insured on the new values with adjustment of betterment. It will defeat the very basis of CPM insurance. There is another school of thought. I'm not endorsing, or not, neither I'm endorsing nor I'm rejecting this aspect altogether, because another school of thought says that, say, a crane is about 5 crores and we have insured it for 2 crores, and the value of machine arrived at is, say, 3 crores. So somebody would say, no, 2 crores is my threshold limit, I should be paid 2 crores. Another school of thought says, no, it has to be 2 by 5 multiplied by 3 and you will get the value of the machine. Mr. Love Patel, my dear friend, the equipment, a very interesting question which we discussed some time back. The equipment is plying in illegal mining area. Many of times the illegal mining risk is aggravated or proper mining conditions are not taken care. If sir has to comment on it, definitely yes, man. We are independent service and we must comment on illegality issue in our report. We have to sensitize both the parties, insured and insurers alike. If we are sure that illegal operations have aggravated the risk, must mention, but with great caution, citing reasons of such aggravation, and we should be in a position to prove that in court of law, if required through, though possibility of such situation is there. There may be a situation later on in courts, but illegality aspects, if it is reported, insurers may take a call to make it a non-standard claim, or they may repudiate their liability altogether. Mr. Manish, what is the estimated life of a road breaker? Now, again, there are guidelines available, but these guidelines are not standardized in our country. Europe and America, you'll find there are standards. They throw away these equipments after 3 to 5 years. Okay, but I have seen road breakers working for more than 10 years also. It depends who is the manufacturer. If it's a Chinese equipment, I would call it a 3 to 5 years life is good enough. Okay, but if it's a German manufacturer or a Japanese or say an advanced country who believe in quality, consistency, and surveys, a manufacturer can certify that in ideal, this is not idle, IDEAL operation conditions. And experience tells that economical physical life of a breaker is normally 5 to 10 years. It depends on per day use with periodic scheduled preventive and predictive maintenance. If you see the policy, how to arrive at value, you have to apply suitable depreciation. Now it is your engineering skill. We should be in a position to identify what is the equipment, what is the economic feasible life in absence of any certification by manufacturer, how it is used, what is the condition after the loss, what could have been the condition before the loss, by looking at the maintenance and the even maintenance records are not, but you can see the expenses made on that machine. Okay, so all these put together, you as an engineer can come to a rational conclusion. Again, there is no fixed mathematical formula. You have to derive, I mean, case to case basis. You have to see there are broad rules, there are broad guidelines. Those are to be adopted, those are to be looked into, and accordingly we can arrive at a depreciated or value of the machine. Now, there can be exceptionally good risk, there can be exceptionally good maintenance. You'll find that these equipment, say a road breaker, can work even for 15 years. Mr. M. Mallikarjuna, IDV. Again, I would say it is never IDV in CPM policies. It is sum insured of the machine is 30 lakhs, but present market value, or I think it is replacement value. His present market value saying means depreciated value. Okay, I am considering this to address to this question as it should be replacement value is 40 lakhs. The machine came for a total loss. The age of machine is 3 years. The machine speedometer reading, working hours reading is not working. How to assess? Okay, check the logbook for operations. You will find that suppose if they don't have a logbook, if they have a logbook, fine. You can come to, because these machines are normally specified, having a specified life in hours, not in years. Okay, how many hours? Suppose if an equipment, if a crane is working in port round the clock, on an average 16 to 20 hours a day, it will attract more depreciation. And if a crane which is sparingly used at a port where the berthing of ships is very low, and the loads are not very heavy, small cargo ships are coming, okay, it might have a lesser rate of depreciation. Okay, so we have to check the logbooks. If logbook is not there, the operator's handbook or operator's notebook could be there. Speak to the user as to per day average running, number of shift span in hours. They may say that 2 shifts mein kaam hota hai, but these shifts may be 12 hours, so it will be round the clock working. If it is 8 hours, accordingly, in absence of about our information, we can apply what is the age left, what is the economic feasible life, and apply depreciation. I think this should be the second or the third step wherein we should go in for a depreciation method. In such equipments where life, you'll find it is not the age, it is the hours, hour meter reading. It is the reading which shows that at so many hours you have to change track rollers, at so many hours you have to change idlers and all that. Okay. Now, average, again, in such situation, an average, it is a matter of debate. If value is less than rupees 30 lakhs, not replacement value, we have discussed above. I think I'm going to skip this answer here. Mr. Sunil, excavator fell into trench and water entered into MCU and damaged ITML. I'm not able to understand what is ITML. Is cost of MCU payable? Yes, if it has fallen, and if it is not run, if it is not operated without necessary repairs, I think if it has fallen, there may be these are low voltage boards. There may not be possibility of damages are low. These are sealed and these are encased. But yes, if there's a damage without running the equipment, and if it is not run without carrying out necessary repairs or reconditioning of these items, it is payable. But it's a dicey situation. If it is genuinely damaged by submerging in water or muddy water, it has failed in continuity, not starting without taking adequate precaution and restarting as per SOP of cleaning and decommissioning. A very dicey situation, very difficult to prove, but yes, with intelligent questions, with observations, you can work out. Mr. Bhaskar, pre-insurance risk inspection. Does all major points to be included as discussed? Sir, again, pre-risk inspection for CPM is a dicey subject. For a small, say, loader or a crane or an excavator, it may be relatively simpler. I'm not saying it is very simple. It may be relatively simpler. But complex machines, okay, road milling machines, there may be other kind of equipment. It's very difficult. Say a tunnel boring machine. A tunnel boring machine itself is a very complex machine. If you are going in for a pre-insurance inspection of a tunnel boring machine, you need to prepare 120, 130, 140 points. How to inspect, what needs to be seen. Okay, whether to rely merely on hearsay, what they say we have to accept, we have to counter check. Okay, so I again propose that a full session on pre-insurance inspection for heavy machines, it can be done, and I will not be able to answer this in this small session of 1 hour, but to mention a few. Note down what is the physical state of machine: good, bad, average, excellent, outstanding, and something like that. Date of purchase, hour meter reading, or life left, or both. Maintenance schedules adhere to or not. What is the type of maintenance, whether it is breakdown maintenance only or preventive, predictive, schedule, whatever. Okay, what is the level of maintenance? Built up record. Each machine is having several sub-assemblies, several assemblies and sub-assemblies. Now, insured might be having a full sheet of built-up record. How this machine is built up by various assemblies. There may be various suppliers. Okay, hydraulic pumps are supplied by Hitachi, and cylinder assemblies are supplied by Dongyong, and something like that. Okay, so a built-up record copy can be obtained, or if not, it is not there, we have to note down. Now digital cameras are there. Take photograph of the manufacturer's plate, convert the entire information in a tabular data. That does not mean that if any equipment is changed, it will not be covered. But yes, for identity purpose, this is a good practice to note down all these things. There's another question. I was not able to understand NATMO. Hilly area NATMO does not define. Is it included in insurance policy? Normally, I have seen, I'm going to deal with this issue in two parts. I have seen some of the policies that hilly area operations will not be covered. Okay. I doubt that these products which are filed with IAD are having this exclusion. If it is there, well, otherwise I think it is unfair and unethical to incorporate such kind of exclusions or limitations. I have not read all file and use products by various insurers, but I think this is unfair to incorporate if it is not there in their file and use products. Okay. Now, some of the CP1, as I have already discussed this, hilly areas are notified areas as to my knowledge. Like we are having some area which is notified as hilly area. Okay. Himachal, you will find many areas are notified. Eastern states, you will find many areas are not notified as hilly areas. Merely a small mound or a small hillock working on that, that thing cannot be considered as hilly area because policy is not defining. In that case, we have to rely on local administration or state administration. They must have declared that this is a hilly area and we can defend insured in such cases. I'm not saying we have to go out of the way, but we can, because insured doesn't know. Okay, we have to know these and we have to compare and we have to find out from government records what are the hilly areas and whether it was operating in that notified area or not. Mr. Rajiv, overturning is covered or not in hilly area? Mr. Rajiv, if you are talking of CPM, overturning is a built-in cover. Unlike CPM, unlike miscellaneous Class G policy, which attracts 50% extra premium only in some specified equipment, 5 class of equipment, shovels, dozers, mobile plants, crane, etc. Okay, Mr. Gaurav, sir, there is an exclusion in policy which states bits, drills, knives, cables, hoses, pipes will not be allowed. They are excluded both in case of directly damage or ensuing damage. Yes, both. Even if there's a damage, it is not covered. Now, I think we are nearing a closer of the session. We can have some open house also after these 2-3 questions. Mr. Nair says, he has given an example. Say an equipment is insured for 100 lakhs, having escalation of 20%, and replacement value of the machine is 1 crore 25 lakhs. Loss occurred on 12/4/20. I calculated it is about 201 days. So how are we, if it is a case of total loss, how are we going to address the situation? Value of the machine is the guiding factor for total loss value. We know that it is 125 lakhs. Apply escalation of 1/360. Where CP5 is having a scalable escalation, that this 20% is divided in over 1 crore in 365 days, and for each day this percentage will go. 20% of the sum insured 100 lakhs will be 20 lakhs. Now this 20 lakhs is divided in 365 days. Every day the sum insured will go on building up. So you have to multiply 1/365 into 201 days over 100 lakhs. This will be our escalated sum insured available for comparison purpose. Thereafter, apply usual depreciation in case of total loss. We have discussed about depreciation methods. Then you have to apply salvage, then average. I have given a question mark. Again, a matter of debate whether it will be the sum insured will be payable or an average would be applicable. I leave it to you because this is still under question. In one of the Supreme Court cases, Reliance General versus Saha, it was the award given by Supreme Court is having a different tones altogether. I am nobody to comment on such decisions, but yes, these decisions are very well there. So we have to be, I mean, we have to know what needs to be done is finally call of the insurers. Okay, and then apply salvage average excess. Now, another situation, if the repair cost is 20 lakhs, 28 lakhs, apply similarly. I think same methodology of arriving at available sum insured, then depreciation on limited life items, average, excess, and salvage. I think the procedure remains same. Another question by Mr. Yudhvir Nair. सतना से लोग बहुत ज्यादा क्वेश्चन पूछते हैं और जम्मू से, ऐसा लगता है. A Tata Hitachi excavator was working for excavation of bridge foundation. Flow was stopped. Okay. Now, Mrs. Nair wants to say that when he opened the when he got the engine opened, insured was asking. He saw that the bearing caps were broken and the connecting rod bent. It's a clear case of continued use for taking out the machine in from bogged down condition. Can we consider these damages? No, we cannot consider these damages. This is to be divided into two parts. If the machine has bogged down, it is submerged in mud, okay, because of entry of mud, whatever damages, excluding that exclusion of the policy, can be given for cleaning, for reviving, for repairs, or even replacement if it is damaged. Okay. But beyond that, due to continued use, even for making attempts or efforts to retrieve the machine by running it are outside ambit of the policy, clearly to my mind. Mr. Rajesh Gupta. Now he has given a very dicey situation. I'm not going to mathematics. I'll narrate the problem principally. Okay, say an imported used machine is purchased at rupees 218.3 lakhs. So there's an intermediary invoice 218.3 lakhs. The breakup is 185 lakhs for the machine, CGST and SGST 33.3 lakhs. Replacement value is 232.23 lakhs. Custom duty is 65.03 lakhs. Transportation is 1.5 lakhs. Whether it is included in some insured or not, that needs to be seen. 18% GST to deal with CD and GST together. Now, this is a dicey situation. I think question by Mr. Rajesh was not very explicit on this part. Even the custom duty part is having a GST component, which is called countervailing duty. Okay, since government is going to lose GST in case of imported equipment, the import duty component is having a GST component which is applied. So we need to see breakup from bill of entry. What was the breakup of GST component, which insured can take credit on. Okay, so again, there are many laws. Custom duty is applicable or not, GST is applicable or not. If all the documents are before us, yes, we can make an analysis rationally and come to a rational conclusion. He has given two ways of calculation. I'm not going to discuss on that because mathematics is a different part. I have tried explaining by way of understanding the principle. Okay. Now, second question: falling of debris inside the tunnel falls under AOG or accident. I would like to reproduce what is act of God peril shall mean in case of CPM policy. Earthquake, fire and shock is an act of God. Landslide, rock slide, subsidence. Okay. To me, it is a case of say debris falling within the tunnel is a case of rock slide. Okay, it's not subsidence nor it is landslide. It is a case of rock slide. Say akin to flood, inundation, storm, tempest, hurricane, typhoon, cyclone. So act of gods are defined. If fall of muck or fall of loose from a tunnel is to be considered act of our God or not, to me, yes, it is an act of God, and accordingly a separate access would be applicable. I think I was able to sum up everything in 50 minutes, all the questions. I think if we have time, I'm open to questions. Organizers, please, over to organizers. Hello. I hope I am heard by everybody. Good evening.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir,
yes, please.
Question from Mr. Mana Ramanathan.
Mr. Mana Ramanathan. Hello, good evening, Mr. Ramanathan.
In machinery insurance policy, whether sensors and MCCB are covered due to usage?
Sensors and MCCBs. Okay. Due to usage means wear and tear.
Due to usage, what you say is covered due to usage?
No, usage is never. I mean, the usage is the wear and tear. Okay, that cannot be subject matter of CPM policy. If there's an accident, yes, sensors and I mean switch gears can be considered if these are damaged.
Okay,
is
sir.
Mr. Ramanathan online?
No, sir.
He's not online. Okay.
You have to find out. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Mr.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, you are hearing, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Sir, some of the MCCBs and sensors are used in chiller plant and main panel boards. So these are used for these
So
are failure.
you are talking of which policy, MBD or CP?
Machinery insurance, sir. MI.
Machinery insurance. Okay. Okay. MCCBs and sensors.
And sensors. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
There is no
So you mean to
failure. Yeah.
you mean to say under machinery insurance policy, that is breakdown policy,
Yeah.
if a sensor has failed, okay, if a sensor
Yes,
has
sir.
failed, whether it will be falling within ambit of the policy or not.
So they have taken a policy for total machinery.
Total machinery. Okay, agreed. Say a chiller plant is there. There's a sensor
Yes, sir.
which has failed, which has resulted into failure of another card. Okay. So put together, say if a chiller of 120 ton, and you must be talking of a chilling plant, say 120 TR or 40 TR or 200 TR and something like that. Okay.
Yeah, it is around 225 tons, sir.
Okay, 2 to 5 tons. There's a failure of a sensor, okay, which has resulted into failure of IGBT. Let us talk this way, okay. Now the sum insured for a 220 chiller would be around 80 lakhs to 90 lakhs or a crore of rupees. That is what I think I have been
Yeah, around 80 lakhs, yeah.
80 lakhs. Okay, it's because I have been handling a similar case. So failure of sensor has resulted into failure of IGBT or a chain of equipment connected in series. If you can
Yes, sir.
attribute this to failure of sensor, even failure of sensor is also covered. Okay, so MCCB is failure. I doubt that because of failure of a sensor, MCCB would fail. MCCB failure, we have to see whether these are connected events. If these are chain of events attributed to each other without intervention of a new force, yes, very well, it is payable. But normally failure of sensors or MCCBs are small amount and will, for 80 lakh amount, the excess itself would be 80,000 rupees. Okay, so in that case, normally such losses are falling within excess policy. But if there's a series of loss connected to each other in real time, these have not happened in separate time or due to continued use. These are very well, I think, admissible in MB policy also.
Okay. So because of the failure, the depreciation has to be calculated for that. But these kind of item sensor and MCCBs, it is not covered under depreciation class, or whether depreciation has to be put, sir?
No sensors. I think because I have been trying to search answers to these, and there are divergent views. Sensors do not have a fixed life. Okay, so to me, PCBs and sensors should not be applied with a depreciation. Okay, leaving aside, say, ultrasound scan probes, etc. Though to my mind, probes are not covered, but these require periodical replacement of after 3 to 5 years. Sensors normally will not have a limited life or a specified life of changing. MCCBs, I think in that there are replaceable contact type. In that case, you can apply some depreciation if contacts are also damaged due to an insurable that indemnifiable peril. I think
Okay, sir.
we have to focus more on CPM, and definitely somebody else will be taking, or if I'm asked to take, I can definitely come forward. But I think let us in this session, if we concentrate more on CPM, it will be more appropriate.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, there is a few hand raised. I will mute it. Mr. Jefferson Dharmraj, if you can ask question. You are self-muted. You have to unmute yourself. Mr. Jefferson Dharmraj. Hello, Mr. Jefferson.
There's no response. He might have left.
Okay. No, he is not left, sir. He is there. Mr. Sridhar Vivi. Mr. Sridhar Vivi, you are self-muted. You have to unmute yourself. I think no response, sir. Mr. Bhagwat Kamath.
Kamaji,
Hello.
good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. My query was when it came to one question was there when it came to indemnification of drill bits and all, whether it is direct or indirect. You said both ways it is not indemnifiable. I want to know, is it really true in that if suppose, for example, let's take a case of ball bearing, which is I go to do a claim where ball bearing is the only part which is damaged, maybe costing 10 lakh. It is not straight away payable, indemnifiable. But if there is a breakage of the shaft and all, and
Just one moment. One moment. You are talking of which policy? CPM or FB?
MBD.
Okay, you are trying to draw an analogy. Okay. So you are saying if a bearing cost 10 lakh rupees is damaged, okay, we
Yeah.
need to see if it's a gradual or if it is instantaneous. There may be a misalignment
No.
and the bearing is damaged, it is payable, it is very well payable. Where is the question of deleting that bearing? If
If only bearing is damaged because of wear and tear, it is not indemnifiable.
No. Wear and tear is a separate thing. That is an excluded peril. If it is an indemnified, look, what happens in a bearing, say C1 grade bearing is a double roller bearing costing 10 lakhs. We are having granite gang saws and marble gang saws, and the ball bearings are having a set of ball bearings, say 2,50,000 to 6 lakh. A good SKF German ball bearing set is 6 lakh rupees. If it fails prematurely without any lack of maintenance, without wear, I mean, it's for an engineer to identify whether it is because of wear or it is because of excessive vibration or because of misalignment. There may be a breakage, and you reduce the life. It is having a limited life of 10,000 hours. SKF chart is available. You see the type of bearing, type of duty, and you can arrive at the total life and the balance life. It is payable. It is very well payable. Where we are saying that MB policy is not giving bearings only. But damage, I'm talking of damage to bearings only. I'm not talking of damage to shaft.
What about the drill bits in that case? Suppose this is a direct damage to the drill bit, yes, not indemnifiable, but something else is damage and
No. Under what policy? Under what policy?
MBD.
Sir, we are talking. I think we started with CPM exclusion. MBD is a separate thing. Okay, I'll not
This
be
is a
able to
CPM
comment.
policy, I think so.
CPM
We have to conclude CPM subject first, sir.
No. When you answered the drill bit query, was it pertaining to CPM or MBD?
It was pertaining to CPM only. It is very explicitly pertaining to CPM. It's not pertaining to MBD. I have mentioned the exclusion also. I have excluded the indicated the exclusion also, which is there in CPM policy.
Okay, thank you.
Right?
Fine, sir.
Okay.
Mr. A. Manikandan, are you there? I think he lost the connection. So now we will say we can take last question. Shall we, sir?
Yes,
Mr.
you
Rajesh
can.
Gupta, please, sir.
राजेश गुप्ता, ये जम्मू और सतना वाले छोड़ते नहीं है.
उनके पास ज्यादा क्लेम है ना सर.
ज्यादा क्लेम्स है इनके पास.
Yes, sir. Rajesh, sir. Sir, you are unmuted. You can speak, sir. You can ask the question, sir. Hello. I think Rajesh's connection lost, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Sushant Kumar Majmudar. You are self-muted. You have to unmute yourself and ask the question. No, sir. I think we lost this connection. Mr. Minal Datta. Sir, today is the problem, sir. I think so. In connection.
No, I'm operating on a hotspot. मेरा तो घर का वाईफाई कनेक्शन भी खराब हो गया. I think it last moment it did, but मैं तो hotspot में भी बहुत अच्छा चल रहा है मेरा.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think we have taken all the questions, sir. Shall we conclude, Sachin sir?
Sure.
Hello, Sachin sir. I think Sachin sir also lost the connection, sir. So we conclude here, sir. Thank you very much for your precious time. Thank you everyone for joining webinar.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, organizers.
Tomorrow, 11 a.m. on the same platform.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye. Bye.